I'm going to now start the webinar. Just to introduce myself, my name is Ibra and I'll be your host for this webinar. Firstly, thank you to everyone for joining us today, taking time out from your busy schedules to join us in this webinar, Breaking into Tech Consultancy. Just to share my screen and kind of talk through the agenda for today. So firstly, I'm going to begin with kind of introducing who GradGurus are. Hopefully, we've been launched since September 2020, and we're doing quite a few different events. I'll come on to those events later on. So hopefully some of you guys will see us familiar. For those that are new to GradGurus and new to how these webinars operate, I'll give a bit more detail into that. But firstly, I'll talk about who GradGurus are, what our mission is, who our team are, what the different roles are, and then talk a bit about our guest speakers. So we have two speakers joining us today, Nishat Haq, who is a cybersecurity consultant, and Sadat Sabur, who is a data engineer consultant. So GradGurus, who we are, what is our mission statement? I guess the best way to kind of explain this or to give you an understanding of who GradGurus are and what we offer is a bit of background about myself. I studied accountancy at University of Manchester. I then went on to join PwC in a graduate role doing auditing. And at that time, similar to a lot of you guys as well, I'm sure you had loads of different applications going on. But one of the key pivots, or if I reflect back, one of the key things that really helped me through that process was I had someone from my local community who was working at EY at the time, who I think he was either a second or third year associate. And he was able to kind of not just necessarily take me through the application process, but just be there as a mentor towards me to tell me, this is the big four, this is the different service lines, tax, consulting, auditing, and kind of give me an oversight of what the big four is about. And then when I actually did my application, he helped me with how to prepare for the psychometric test, tips and advice in terms of the interview and the assessment center. And that was really gave me a good foundation to kind of go off and do my applications to the various different big four and eventually be successful with PwC. So what does that mean for GradGurus? Well, if we take a step back, myself and the wider team, we're looking to coordinate this mentorship on a wider scale so that we can give you guys that mentorship. So when you are going for your application process, you feel a lot more prepared. You have a lot more understanding of what the application process is about, and you feel a lot more confident when you go into your interviews. And how we do that specifically through a number of different routes. Firstly, we do CV reviews. So we'll kind of pick up the phone with you. You submit your CV. We'll do various different annotations. What looks good on your CV? What could be improved? What needs a bit more detail? Just a full process. Secondly, if you are live in certain application process, i.e. you have upcoming interview, you have upcoming assessment center, get in touch with us. I'll share the details on how you can get in touch with us later on. And then we'll kind of mentor you through that process. As mentioned, or what you'll see on the next slide, not all of us are finance related, but we do have a very strong network. So if you're tech consultancy related or you want to go down the software engineering route, we do have the various network where we could reach within our network and contact those people on your behalf, and they in turn will mentor you and help you throughout that application process. So kind of a couple of key things there. A, we help you with CV reviews. B, whatever stage of the application process you're at, whether that's interviews, assessment centers, we can coach you through that just to make sure you're best prepared for that stage of the application process. So hopefully that gives you a good insight into who we are, GradGurus, and what we aim to achieve. Moving on to the next slide, I'm just going to introduce the wider team. So we have going from the top left to the bottom, Ali Ahmed. He's the founder. He currently works at JP Morgan in the internal audit practice. Moving on, we have Ahmed Estawani. He currently works at KPMG in assistant manager as an auditor, specializing in financial services. Both myself and Ahmed are chartered accountants, ascertaining the ICAW qualification. So if any of you guys are interested in that route, going down the auditing, or just generally interested in what the ACA, ICAW qualification is about, feel free to reach out to us. And then just a bit more, moving on to Hudayfa Jama. He's more of our, if I were to put it in inverted commas, tech guy. So his background is more in software engineering and consultancy as well. I'm here at the bottom left, as mentioned, Ibra Ahmed. I worked within the Big Four, so initially starting off at PwC, then moving on to EY, and then I made the plunge going into industry. And I currently work for EMIS Group, which is a software provider for the NHS and other healthcare providers, and I work within the internal audit team. Next up, we have Takia Hussain, who is our entrepreneur. So his background is more consultancy, fintech, digital marketing. And last but not least, we have our Muhammad Hafar, who we classify as our offsite specialist. He's currently based in Lebanon, and his background is all in strategy. So he's previously worked at a couple of investment banks, so JP Bullhorn, and more recently, he also worked at Accenture. So that's kind of who we are and what the team consists of. I'm now going to kind of introduce the premise of this webinar. Obviously, this is titled Breaking into Tech Consultancy. And as mentioned before, we've been operating since September 2020, and we've done a number of different events as part of the Breaking Into series. So a couple come to mind is breaking into the Big Four. Obviously, a lot of us guys are Big Four, kind of ex-Big Four. Another event that we did was investment banking. And the purpose of these events is just to kind of give you an understanding of what your career options are available, and B, kind of give you an insight into application process. And the way we do that, as mentioned before, we have our guest speakers. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to our first guest speaker, which is Nishat Haq. So if I could invite her to the stage, I guess, and ask if she could put her camera on and then share her screen. That would be perfect. Over to you, Nishat.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the introduction. Let me just share my screen for you guys. So hi everyone, my name's Nisha. I'm a cyber strategy consultant at Deloitte. Basically what that means is I do the non-technical side of cyber. So I do, for example, the more strategic business focused side of cybersecurity. So I don't do the sort of coding and ethical hacking side of things. So apologies if that's more your interest, but I'm sure in the Q&A I can refer you to some different resources if that's what you're interested in. So I'll be focusing on that in my presentation. So just to go into the kind of what I like to call demystifying consulting. So in order to really break into this industry, you need to know what it's all about and be able to articulate that in your interviews. So if you think of consulting, of like being like a business doctor, so the same way that if you go to a doctor, you may go there with a problem, or you may go there with symptoms and not particularly know what's wrong, and you expect that doctor to come to you with solutions, with medicine, in order to provide you with the things that you need in order to be healthy. So that's basically what consulting is, but in this case, the doctor's the consultant and the patient is a client, which could be from any different industry group. So as you can see at the bottom, at Deloitte in particular, we work across lots of different industries. I've personally worked with lots of different sectors like the NHS, I've worked with NGOs, tech firms, I recently worked with the government, and no 2 days are really the same. So I've done everything from report writing to doing interviews and workshops with clients. I've done things like risk assessments and vulnerability assessments. In terms of the qualifications that you need, this can be super varied. So if you want to go down the more tech route, you may need to do a more sort of technical based degree like computer science or engineering, or if like me, you're more interested in that link between business and technology, you can do pretty much any degree, and the prerequisite is normally a kind of 2-1 degree. And I would say in terms of skills, the top 3 I would say is you need communication, problem solving and project management skills. It's so important in particular to have good communication skills and have good emotional intelligence and be empathetic. You're going to be working with lots of different people from all across the globe, really, and having that understanding of different cultures and understanding the client's business and their problems. They may come to you very stressed about something, and just being able to relate to them on a personal level and help them with their business problems as well definitely makes a huge difference. One thing that I'd also point out is within tech consulting, there's some routes that seem more obviously like tech consulting, like what I do here in risk advisory and cyber risk. But there's other areas as well that you may not think relate to tech consulting, but can do. So for example, if you look at management consulting and things like human capital, nowadays there's a big growth in the market of companies, like from a more HR perspective, using technologies like the cloud, for example, to create recruitment platforms online. And there's a big growth in that area at the moment. So a key point that I've sort of highlighted here is ensuring that when you think of tech consulting, not just thinking about it from the technical point of view, and just remembering that business and technology are very much intertwined. So for those of you from the non-tech angle, your business acumen will definitely help you, or even if you don't come from a business background, having an understanding of the two and how they're linked will definitely help you if you want to go into this industry. And for those of you who do come from a very technical background, utilizing that, but knowing then how to put it in a context of a business environment and being aware of business principles and having a balance between those two things will definitely help you in the industry as well. So moving on to my career journey. So I actually, when I started university, was quite a difficult transition for me. I actually changed my degree 3 times in my first year. So I started off on an English degree. I then realized sort of in the middle of semester 1 that it wasn't quite for me. And then thought I was going to go into law with politics. But then when I started comparing law to business, I realized that actually what I liked about business was the fact that it was ever changing and very innovative, and you know, you could really make an impact in quite a quick way, whereas law sort of seemed a bit more stagnant to me and a bit more difficult to make those changes. So then when I decided to sort of come back the following year, I did management at Manchester University. I then tried to get as much work as possible. So I did so many different odd jobs here and there. I worked in a law firm. I got work experience in banking. I worked as a teaching assistant. So I definitely recommend to you guys, if you're not 100% sure of what you want to do, utilize your time at university to just get involved with as many things as possible. And then that will really help you to see what it is that you do and don't like about each job. And then hopefully as you do each thing, you'll get that bit closer to figuring out what it is that you want to do. I then also got a great opportunity to do an internship in Toronto, and that really helped me to realize that actually I did want to work for a larger, more global corporation, because the idea of being able to travel and go on to secondments was really appealing to me. I also made sure to join business societies, things like Enactus, ASEC, just to sort of make sure that in my interviews I would have something more practical, more interesting to talk about, rather than just my degree. So I would definitely recommend for you guys to get involved as much as you can with different things at university. Then I finally graduated. Here's a picture of me doing the classic toss your hat in the air pose. So that was a big milestone for me. I then moved to London and I got my first grad job at Accenture. Now I've talked about business a lot because I initially thought I wanted to do management consulting. So I did a business management degree thinking that was the way I wanted to go. And then when I joined Accenture, I realized that actually what I found most interesting was the tech side of things. And that's the area that clients were asking for the most. And the area that I just found was was the most sort of fast moving, really exciting, where everything seemed to be happening. So I kind of pivoted more to that side of things. I then moved back to Manchester during the first lockdown back in March 2020, which feels like a long time ago now. And I started my role with Deloitte in cyber strategy. And at the moment, I'm sort of balancing my work with professional studies. I've got here as a key point that attitude is really everything. To be honest, now in hindsight, looking at this slide, I've probably drawn this in the wrong way. I've drawn it as a straight line, but actually it was definitely a lot of ups and downs in between. To give you guys an example, moving to London was actually a really big milestone and a big deal for me, because when I started uni and started my management degree, I actually wanted to do it in London, and I got great A-level results, but at the time I couldn't afford to move to London and study there. And that was something at the time that really frustrated me. And I thought, it's a shame that I got the grades, but the financial aspect is, I felt at the time, holding me back. But I tried to just make the most out of what I had, and I realized that actually I'm pretty lucky that I live in Manchester and there's a great business school right on my doorstep. So I'm going to use what I have around me, be resourceful, but still keep in mind the goals and the ambitions that I want, and just sort of keep pushing and keep trying until hopefully I achieve what I want to. And eventually I did end up achieving that milestone and that goal that I had. It may not have been straight away, but definitely if you just keep having that good positive attitude and just utilizing what you do have at the time, then hopefully, any of those goals and ambitions that you have, you'll be able to meet them over time. Now to go back to the sort of application process of applying to Deloitte. So there's 4 stages. The first stage, pretty simple. You just apply online, you give some information about who you are, your education, your experience. In this section, I would definitely recommend adding everything, every little experience. So whatever part-time job you've got going on, even if you think that it's not that relevant, definitely add it in, because every job will teach you something and teach you some transferable skills. And actually being able to show that you can balance your studies with a part-time job is actually pretty impressive. So make sure you put in all your efforts into applying online and putting in all the detail. The second stage is an immersive online assessment. It's basically like a psychometric test. So they will give you certain scenarios that may happen at Deloitte and ask you to rank from sort of most likely to least likely what you would do in that situation. So I would say, obviously, be yourself, but also read the job spec and the person spec and have a think about what type of mindset is needed for the role that you're applying for. So, for example, like I mentioned before with cybersecurity, when clients come to you, they may be very stressed. Maybe they're dealing with a potential cyber breach. Maybe they need to roll out a huge training system, which their staff may not be that responsive to. So you've got to think about how you would handle that situation, what kind of skills you would need, and sort of answer according to, what you think the best person in that job would do. At the end of that, you'll then receive a strengths report. So that's just a sort of automated thing that will show you kind of where your strengths lie, and potential areas for improvement as well. If you pass that stage, you'll then go on to the job simulation stage. So this is kind of similar to a video interview, but it's not in real time. So the questions will be on the screen, and then you'll give a pre-recorded answer, and you'll have about 3 minutes to answer each question. But it also gives you some scenarios. So you might have to write some written answers, like an email, for example, or have some multiple choice questions. What I would say, people always ask me kind of how is best to prepare for these things. What I would say is be authentic. Don't over prepared to the point where you are kind of coming across as robotic, but at the same time, there are certain things that you can do, like just recording yourself and getting used to giving your answers in a video format, especially now during the pandemic where people may not be able to meet face to face. And do your research and make sure that you understand the role that you're applying for, the industry that you're going into. And then if you pass that stage, the final stage is the partner interview and the presentation. And my advice in this section would be, in the sort of end of the interview where the partner asks you, right, do you have any questions? That's your time to shine. So I would say really utilize that time to ask interesting, engaging questions, ask the partner about their job, ask about the business strategy moving forward. Because to be honest, with a lot of the other interview questions, most graduates will probably answer them in a similar way because they're sort of prescriptive interview questions that will be asked to everybody. So that's really your time to shine. And in the presentation, you'll be given a question, a sort of scenario based on the role that you're going for. So I think mine was around, how would you help a client ensure that their cybersecurity is as enhanced as possible. And so I gave a 5-minute presentation on that. I made sure that I researched into the industry to sort of find out the industry best practice and standards, and incorporated that into my presentation just to show that I really understood the role that I was applying for. And my sort of key point for this slide would be, don't give up and focus on getting your foot in the door, even if what you get isn't the sort of perfect dream job that you wanted. So to give you guys an example, back in, I think, 2017, I applied for a internship with Deloitte. Now, it was in tax and it was in the Birmingham office. To be honest, I had no interest in joining the tax department and I didn't want to move to the Birmingham office, but I knew that having that opportunity would open doors for me. It would get my foot in the door of the company and be a good experience to put on my CV. So I did it anyway. So what I would say is just sort of be optimistic. If you don't get what you want straight away, that's okay. Use every opportunity that you get as a learning experience. And just as a means of sort of getting your foot in the door and learning more. And hopefully, in the end, you'll eventually get to the position that you want to be in. So that is pretty much it from me. If you've got any questions, then I know they've got a Q&A section at the end, so feel free to ask anything then. So I'll hand it back to you, Ibra.
Thanks, Nisha. Really comprehensive that. I'm going to break my own rules here, and instead of waiting for the Q&A, I'm just going to go ahead and ask you a couple of questions. Just picking out a couple of things you mentioned in your PowerPoint. In the first slide, you illustrated 3 key skills: communication, problem solving, and project management. If I were to, obviously a lot of our attendees are university students here, so how would they be able to if they don't have that skill set, how can they, in their current environment, how could they develop those skill set?
Yeah, good question. So I would say, like I sort of mentioned before when I said I got involved with business societies, things like volunteering, getting work experience, those are all great examples that you can then show those skills. So with project management, for example, in every degree, most people have to do like a team presentation or something. So that's an example there. With communication, if you're part of a society where you're having to speak to lots of different people and do events and things like that, then that's a good example. And with problem solving, again, I think you can make that degree specific. You could give a specific example of something that you've done at work, helped a customer with a problem that they had. I think everyone will have their own experiences which they can draw upon to sort of answer that and show those skills.
Yeah, makes sense. And just my second question, if I were to compare my almost my career today, if that makes sense, I did accountancy at college, I did it at university. I was very regimented and fixated that I wanted to do Big Four audit. Whereas if I were to look at your experience that you alluded to, you weren't exactly sure what degree you wanted to do, you weren't sure what career you wanted to do. If we look at the attendees, we probably have a range from first years to third years, who not not necessarily entirely sure what career they want to go into. So what kind of advice would you suggest to these students who are not entirely sure what career path they want to take on?
I would say get as much work experience as possible and just utilize the fact that you're a uni student. It's the best time to just explore as many jobs and as many things as possible, because you don't have to commit to anything right now. So you can do, a week of work experience here and there, use your summers, use your time off, and each experience will sort of hopefully teach you something new and help you to figure out what it is that you want to go into.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm hoping I shouldn't be able to say, shouldn't necessarily have to say this, but for our first years, obviously we have spring weeks, so a lot of opportunities there available. For second years, you have internships and placements. So really do apply to these places. And as Nisha alluded to in her presentation, she went for the Deloitte one, even though it wasn't necessarily something she wanted to do, but it's just something to look good on her CV. And it's not a long-term commitment as well, because I think it's a 6 weeks internship. But thank you for that, Nisha, really detailed. I'll come back to you in the Q&A session. In the time being, I'm just going to share my screen. I'm going to hand you over to our next speaker, Sadat, and his background, which I'll let him talk about himself. So over to you, Sadat.
Yeah, hi everyone. So my name is Sadat. I guess a brief story about myself. So I studied at UCL mechanical engineering, graduated around in 2015. I wasn't, I guess, too sure what I wanted to do. I was interested in, my phone, how that works, how things work, and I like technology. So what ended up happening was I got like an intern role as a QA engineer in a startup, but I was always interested in business, and I could see in the startup there was an I guess appetite slash ambition with scaling a business, the strategy behind it, as well as the technology element. So codifying a solution, writing up code, either on R or Python, and then implementing that in the product. And I could see, how powerful those skills were in this startup. And I wasn't there for long. Was there for just like under 6 months. And then I used that kind of to propel my ambition to get into EY and Ernst & Young, which I joined kind of later, straight after that, I guess, startup. And there is where I joined as a management consultant. And I was there for about 3.5, just under 4 years, where I specialized in data analytics, data slash digital consulting. And I guess in essence, what did I do there? I worked on a range of projects, spanning specifically in financial services around wealth and asset management, banking and insurance, on a host of projects looking at kind of cleaning data, using data to provide kind of interesting reports to, I guess, CEOs or stakeholders, or going through kind of regulatory compliance projects, and grabbing insights and sharing that to, I guess, senior stakeholders or CEOs or COOs, so they could make sense of what's happening in their company, or if they wanted to acquire a company, they could make sense of that company and what they are doing, and how they would go about doing it. What's the underlying strategy? What does their digital slash software solution look like? And that was kind of the main feed of the training, as well as the experience that I got from Ernst & Young. And then I guess, as Nishat highlighted, a lot of the work slash innovation and excitement stemmed from working on digital slash technology solutions, not just in finance, but I guess everywhere. And this is proof today in society, where we're using a lot of social media, our phones on a regular basis. We're mapped to like loads of things, and I guess that's where like my hunger and desire, I guess, went. And so therefore I kind of decided to specialize more in the data side of things. And then I joined a place called Capco, which I guess helped me specialize in kind of data lineage, data engineering type consulting, working with a host of fintechs, as well as established financial service firms, as well as new players who, just wanted to, I guess, build an application or a product, and we could help design that, architect that, and then help them, help them kind of grow it in the market. As Nishat mentioned, it wasn't kind of a line, or it wasn't kind of an upward trend. It goes up and down, and there are moments in it where you're not 100% sure what you're doing, or you realize, okay, this is what I prefer doing, this is what I don't like doing, and then that's how kind of the specialization came into play. So I guess I have here, what do I do? What is, I guess, data analytics, data engineering, data science? So I guess if I start with analytics, because that's what I guess what was involved in, it's about using the data we have uh, to apply knowledge and actionable insights across a broad range of applications or domains that a company may have. And that could be a few things, that could be, a person's, age, their if they're male or female, where they live, their demographic, and then you kind of have a better understanding of, okay, how does that person as a customer, would they like my product? What are their likes? What are their dislikes? How can we apply social engineering measures so we can push things to them that that they are interested in? If I like football, if I'm a sports enthusiast, I'm not gonna like something that's on my screen to do with chess. I want to see something that's around football or rugby. So it's around understanding that human being, that customer, using that data on a billion scale, and using that information to help create these models or these solutions to then propose to the customer, and then help customers make decisions. But the analytics element, is about just taking data and understanding it and making sure there's actionable insights. Data engineering is more of a software engineering approach. So how this is done, what we're going to do, what we're going to design, and what we're going to develop. And it could be, again, I don't want to be too technical here, based on the audience here, but it's around building different, I guess, software techniques or software solutions, using APIs to access data and to do it quickly, and then to provide a solution rapidly as well, either by prototyping, by designing, and working with a bunch of team members to get this over the road. And then data science is, I guess, a mixture of all the both. It's an interdisciplinary field that uses, I guess, scientific methods, mathematical methods, processes, algorithms, and systems to extract knowledge and insights from structured and unstructured data. You could say it's a concept of putting together statistics, data analysis, management consulting, techniques, and methods all into one. So it's like a combination of everything, and we I guess that I would say there is a mathematical element to it, but I guess in my job it's helping understand opportunities and then providing a data science solution to those opportunities, from where I am at Capco. And that kind of entails data mining, machine learning, using big data. These are like I guess hot topics that you may not be aware of, you may be aware of, but if I put it into context, maybe the audience are on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, and there are billions of users using that, and it's about understanding what they're doing on this platform, what's being trended, how do we monitor that trend, how do we monitor the volume of people hashtagging help, or hashtagging a blue sky, or there's a fire or something like that, and how is that handled and portrayed, across the different users on these different platforms. So it's really interesting, and there's a lot of exciting work that happens there. And in terms of industry and clients, again, majority of my clients have been financial service clients, which means they're either banks, insurance companies, or wealth and asset management companies. But I have had a flavor of different types completely, whether that be kind of football, I guess, football clubs, doing different things, or even just tech companies or fintech companies that want to kind of have a financial element behind it. And I guess the nature of the work is, I much like Nishat mentioned, I was a management consultant. Just it requires a lot of problem solving. Again, it might sound scary that there are I've talked about algorithms and systems, but when I started, I had very little to no technical knowledge. I did study mechanical engineering, but that wasn't really, I didn't know how to code. I didn't know how to use SQL or Python or these other kind of hot coding languages that are out there, Java. And you just kind of pick it up. You look at the problems, you see different ways to solutionize that problem, and then you share it and you communicate it across to your colleagues and team members. And then for me, I started to enjoy building things. I started to realize, okay, I can actually build things quite quickly and share it across, and then share it to scale. So not just build a solution for a strategy that would help a few people, or a few team members, but it could help the entire company. And I was the only deliverable member for that. So it was, if I give you a quick example, you've heard of Twitter. You may have heard of bots on Twitter, which kind of spam information. Usually behind that is a person, could be a teenager, 15, 16, 18, could be someone older, who's designed and programmed that bot, and who's told that bot rules to say, there is, yeah, I'm gonna pick a silly example out of the sky, but my cat is on a tree, and then he shared that bot, across the platform, and it's just repeating the same thing, x times. It could be 10 times, it could be 100 times, it could be 1,000,000 times, but that can happen. That was what was exciting to me. One person can do, if they design it well and productionize it well, they can have a huge impact on a small organization or a large organization as well. And then I guess moving on. Okay, so how did one get into this area? What are the, I guess, key skills? What would be the advice I would give? I would say, confidence is a huge thing. So first and foremost, you can't be confident if you're not sure, what you're getting yourself into. I got myself into a management consulting route, who then specialized in data and went into the more software/data orientated route. And yeah, to I guess firstly go into that is about knowing what's happening there. You don't need to know anything. You don't need to know everything, sorry, but you need to have a good, base level information, and then being confident. Share those ideas, share what you've learned, or share what article you've read about AI, or if you've watched a Netflix documentary about data ethics, hacking, ethical hacking. Share that insight with your interviewees when you have that. And then communication and networking are huge. So the more people, or the more kind of sessions you come to like this, or hackathons that are around your neighborhood, the better you'll be able to understand what you're getting yourself into. If you prefer, doing some cool technical stuff, or just talking about the technical stuff, or just watching the technical stuff, or watching someone build a kind of a software kind of program, and doing something fun with it. And networking is huge, because the more people you talk to, the more knowledge you'll gain, and the more you'll be able to shape when it comes to interview session, the interview kind of practices and the procedures. And I'm not going to go through the procedures because that's what Nishat mentioned, but I guess those are the key things. And then I guess skills is the next thing. So for me, again, I didn't know how to code beforehand. I didn't have much knowledge around data, but as time went by, I kept on hearing data is the new gold. Web analytics. There's also, there's a host of things where, personal data is being sold on, different types of channels on the web. And so the first thing I've put down, is problem solving skills. So if you can, again, it comes to uni, if you identify a problem, you solve it. It doesn't have to be mathematical. It could be something that's qualitative. And then, being confident to tackle that problem head on, and then really, give a ratified solution. And then I guess the last two things I have on the slide here, and I've said it before: affinity towards technology. So I use kind of a bunch of apps, my phone, websites, my computer on a daily basis. I'm super interested in how they work, from clicking something to it popping up into the screen to behind that going into like binary zeros and ones and twos. I actually wanted to know, how does this work? And maybe you don't need to know it to that degree, but me enjoying my usage of using these kind of products or technology solutions, I kind of enjoy what's readily available and the choice that I have as an individual, and the choice that everyone has on this call as well, to do more things than what couldn't be done 5-10 years ago. And then the last thing was, and it's I guess a typical thing because I studied engineering, is around building things. I've started to learn and understand, and maybe it's a period of self-discovery for me, but I've done a host of work through consulting, and I've started to realize, I enjoy it when I build something, maybe shape it from 0 to 10, and where I can express it and share it out. And that could be, that could be something that's software oriented, or that could be, writing up a paper, or, building a model, a mathematical model, or, building a strategy. Building doesn't necessarily mean, building something complicated and technical and using software or SQL. It could just be a deliverable that you're super passionate about. And I guess one came to light was, within my organization, there's a big, I guess, push around Islamic finance and understanding what that is. And I have a huge personal affinity to that. And I tried to combine, technology and data, and what's out there in terms of, apps like Klarna, PayPal Credit, etc. And I combine the two, and that's the beauty of it. You can combine what you like with what's out there, and then literally just run with it. And then I managed to, publish a few things, as well as work on, a couple things more that are, that I'll have to wait and see. But yeah, that I'll stop talking now, talking too much. But yeah, that shapes things up from my end.
No, thanks for that, Sada. It was really comprehensive. Definitely interesting to hear about the different projects that you worked on. Yes, especially coming from an internal audit background, the level of work you guys do seems a lot more interesting. So I guess, guys, apply for tech consultancy, don't apply for internal audit. Just one thing that I wanted to pick out as part of your presentation is networking. And I guess this is a bit of a loaded term these days, especially for students. If you're a first-year student or second, third-year student, how would you kind of effectively network outside your fellow peers? Like, how would you be able to network with people in professions or people in these type of companies?
Yeah, sure. So I would say two things. When there are kind of stalls in your university, don't be afraid. The people in those stalls were yourselves a few years ago. Go out to them, ask them for their names, their email addresses, ask them directly about what they think about work. Do they enjoy it? You know, would I be a good person? Would I be a good fit in your company? You know, what do I need to do? Just ask them directly. And I know, you know, this COVID situation has made things remotely, but I would even go as far as to say, you know, make a LinkedIn account if you don't have one, but then reach out to people who, you know, came from your university and went into companies that you enjoy, whether that be Google, the big four like PwC, or whether that be, you know, more boutique consultancy places. Just literally send a cold message on LinkedIn, and you'll be surprised. People are always willing to help. People relate to you because they used to be a uni student, you know, who didn't know what exactly to do, who studied maths, who studied history, who studied engineering, etc. And they would always be, you know, sometimes it doesn't work, but the times it does, you'll be, you know, very surprised at what, you know, knowledge they can share and help
Yeah.
with your own application process.
Makes sense. So I guess at the end of this call, we'll have 30 different LinkedIn requests from all the attendees on here. But yeah, it makes sense. Good, some very valuable points there. Just moving on to the final segment of the webinar today. This is the Q&A section. But before I go on to that, again, apologies, guys. I'm going to draw your attention towards another poll. This is more of a exit poll just to kind of get an understanding of how you thought today's event was and any feedback, what we could improve on. And as mentioned at the start, we really want to tailor our events for you guys going forward, really help you guys in the current labor market and make sure our events are designed as so. So in terms of the Q&A section, I'm going to give you a couple of you guys a couple of minutes just to do the poll, and then I'm going to start the Q&A section. I can see there's a couple of questions coming through, but by all means, if you ask many more questions as they come through, I've got something in the chat as well. Yep. In the meantime, can I also invite Ahmed to the Q&A section? If I can request all speakers, Ahmed, Nishat, and Sadat, to turn on the cameras and unmute themselves for the poll. Just very quickly to introduce Ahmed, as mentioned on the earlier slide, he works at KPMG in assistant manager role. Obviously, it's not directly related to tech consulting, but he's been through the application process, and a lot of the skill sets are kind of overlap and similar. A key word is competency, which I'm sure you guys are sick to death of hearing about in terms of application process. But Ahmed will be joining us on the Q&A section as well. So, right, so the first question I have is from Adil Ahmed. He's asking, what are the working hours like in tech consulting? So I guess I'll pose that to Nishat to begin with. Obviously, your experience stems from both Deloitte and Accenture. So what kind of working hours were you experienced?
Okay, I'll be honest. The working hours can be quite long. So I would say if you want to go into tech or consulting, you know, you may have to be prepared to work long hours, especially when you've got client deadlines and things like that. But what I would say is it can balance out. So for example, at Deloitte, they have a sort of benefit system where you can buy 10 additional days of holiday, which is what I've done this year. So there are ways of balancing it out, but on a day-to-day, you know, going to be honest with you guys, it can get pretty long. But yeah, I would just say sort of try and work smart if you enter the industry, and make sure you balance things out and take your annual leave and things.
Yeah, just posing the same question to you, Sadat. What's your experience been like in terms of working hours?
Yeah, I would agree with Nishat. So it's dependent on, you know, what projects I'm on. There have been some projects which I've had to do, you know, longer hours based on deliverables, deadlines, the nature of the project. And there have been some projects where, you know, it's just been 9 to 5, and it's been quite structured, and, you know, it's just the nature of the project. So it does vary depending on, you know, your role and what projects they're in, but it's kind of what you sign up for as well, because you're not here to just do a job, but you're also here to learn and really kind of carve out your career and I guess branch out at the same time.
Yeah, Ahmed, I'm not going to ask you the hours you worked in a Big Four audit. We're not going to do a good representation job, so I'm going to move on to the next question. Sticking with you, Ahmed, though, the next question that's posted is, how do you choose between the different service lines at the Big Four?
It's a very good question. So we've just heard a very good understanding of what goes on in tech consulting. So obviously, what I took from that personally is having an interest in technology, an interest in data science, data manipulation. So if that's not, for example, for me, that's not for me. So therefore, you're left with, say, audit, tax, and other lines in advisory. If you want to go down the accounting route, you want to do the chartered accounting qualification, then you want to probably go down the audit route. If you're you want to work for the Big Four, you've maybe done a law degree or a history degree, English degree, you're interested in doing lots of reading and research, that's probably where you want to go into tax. So a lot of your time in tax is going to be spent looking at tax legislation, doing a lot of research. So that's probably where you want to go in that direction. In terms of corporate finance, transactional services, those are sort of the Big Four's investment banking type arm. And so if you're into investment banking, you want to be applying to JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and you want to also be applying to those lines there. So I guess it depends on what you've studied, what your interests are, and what your strengths are as well. So, just to sort of summarize myself, I did accounting at university. It was an obvious choice to go into audit. Again, for our speakers today, they're both interested in the technology side of things. Going into tech consulting was, again, somewhat of an obvious choice.
Yeah. Just to add on to that, thanks for that, Ahmed. If you are currently in a situation where you're ready to do your application, but you're not entirely sure which service line you want to apply to, get in touch with us and we'll be able to kind of put you in touch with people from the different service lines so you'll get a bit of a flavor and a feel of what each service line is about. And then obviously you could make your application. Obviously, if I'm not mistaken, you can only do one application per company. So just be conscious of that. The one that you do needs to really count. But yeah, thanks for that, Ahmed. Moving on to the next question, which is our most liked question with 1 like. This is from DJ Jackson. Are there any certifications or continuing education courses you recommend to help get a consulting position? So if I can just pose that question to Nishat.
To be honest, I think with consulting, there's a lot of different areas that you can go into. So it kind of depends, like say with cyber, there's lots of different things you can do, like COBIT or ISO 27001, but a lot of those certifications are paid for by the company when you join. So I would say actually, instead of sort of forking out your own money, wait until you sort of join, and then you will actually know which qualifications are most relevant for your role and what's actually going to be useful for your clients as well. But in the meantime, I guess just do sort of desk-based research, and a lot of companies release like white papers and all these different reports on different areas. So I'd say read up on them and just sort of brush up on your knowledge. You don't need to pay for a certification or anything like that before you join.
Yeah, thanks for that. Sarah, just posing a question to you. This is kind of an add-on from the earlier question in terms of working long hours. So this is a question from Colin. Wondering what the best takeaway or best positive comments you got or experience you have from the most grueling projects?
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. So I guess the most grueling project I had was one where I was very long hours, and I guess working with the types of people that I was in that project, I had to kind of navigate how to, I guess, talk and manage them. But the best takeaways were around, emotional intelligence, learning to talk to people in very stressful, situations, being resilient, and also it was actually the one project which pushed me into, I guess, the world of data. I had previous projects around technology, but this project, I started to understand, and maybe it was a light bulb moment of, the art of the possible, what could be done, in a very small team, with, low resources that could take, huge amounts of revenue. And yeah, it was I learned loads. It was a lot of hours. I had to be very resilient, but it was a huge factor in shaping who I am and where I am in my career.
Yeah, makes sense. Ahmed, just a question for you. So it's a bit more of a specific question. So this person, he was posting this question: as someone who is finishing university in June, having done a placement year at Bank of America, it's frustrating not to have ascertained a graduate job. Is it valid to still apply for internships for more experience, or to still keep applying for graduate jobs?
It's a very good question. I think if you've done a placement year in Bank of America, that's more than enough experience. As an example, I did an interview with a company, and we were talking through my CV, which had no work experience. And then I mentioned that I'd done work experience at KPMG, and they said, everything else pretty much on my CV didn't have really any meaning. They just wanted to talk about that work experience. And this was a 4-week internship. So if you've done 1 year at Bank of America, that's more than enough. It's absolutely very normal for people not to have graduate jobs when they leave university, either because you've been busy studying or because that's just the look of the draw. You didn't get any graduate jobs. But, with that experience, with that CV, you just need to apply full time. So during university in your 3rd or 2nd year, you're applying, but you're studying at the same time, and that might be a bit difficult. If you treat applying for a job once you've graduated as like a full-time job itself, so you wake up at 9 o'clock in the morning, and between 9 and 5, you're just applying for jobs. With a 1-year placement at Bank of America, I'd be very shocked if within, let's say 2 to 3 months, you didn't have a job there. And just finally to say that one of the members of our GradGurus team, also didn't have a job when they graduated, and it took, several months, but they ended up with a job at Accenture as an example. But again, it just took a good amount of effort in applying. So I think with that experience, I'd be very, very surprised if you didn't have a job within 3 to 6 months, applying, 9 to 5 and giving a good amount of effort and course to that.
Yeah, just to reiterate those points, I definitely think you should still keep applying to graduate roles, and kind of, you've done your time with internships and placements, just focus on the grad roles as well. But as Nisha alluded to her in her presentation, she had various different applications, and a person might not necessarily be successful at once, but eventually they are. So just keep on trying. Nisha, coming over to you, got a specific question for you. What differences have you found between working at Deloitte compared to Accenture?
So with Accenture, they are more focused on tech consulting. Whereas at Deloitte, although yes, we do have tech consulting, there's also the audit and the accounting and finance side of the business. So I actually had to learn a lot more of like legal things when I joined Deloitte. So I would say that's the sort of main difference, because Deloitte's Big Four and Accenture isn't. So I would say if you are a very creative person, I think Accenture's great for that, and it's slightly less structured compared to Deloitte. But if you're the type of person where you want a very clear-cut, structured career plan, the way that Deloitte structure their grad schemes, I think, is really great for that. So I guess it depends, what type of person you are, but they're the main differences that I found.
Yeah, thanks for that. Sadat, a question for you. How, and we kind of touched on this in our presentations, but how important is it to learn coding if you want to work in tech consulting?
I would say, it's not the be all or end all, but it definitely helps. These days, people during lockdown, you can do kind of remote sessions on Code Academy or on YouTube even, to learn the basic fundamentals of Java or Python or SQL for free. And if it's for free and, in front of your door, I would definitely just try it out and see, how you feel about it. But in tech consulting, no, you don't need to know about coding or coding principles or coding best practices. You technically learn some of this stuff on the job sometimes as well, or sometimes you don't even touch the technical stuff and you work on more of the strategic side of things, the stakeholder management side of things, and that's how you get involved in the technology consulting element. I guess last point I would add, people in Google, or not, I won't say Google as the first example, but people in fintechs or tech companies, not all of them know how to code. Some people are in line with helping shape the product because they're good at voicing their passion and their vision, and they want to work with developers to help shape and build that vision, and you don't need to know how to code for that. It will definitely help, and definitely help in the communication and networking element. And by all means, I think it's a great, like everyone should try and, have some sight of it, because it's like, it's like ABCs or maths, but it's not, required.
Thanks for that, Sada. Just for Hussein, he's posted a question in the chat. It's quite a long-worded question, and it's specifically for Nisha. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to send that question separately to Nisha, and then we'll reach out to you, Hussein. I think we have your email address from registering on Eventbrite, and we'll send that send the answer to you on email if that's okay, just because it's quite a wordy question. But just looking through the remaining Q&As, probably looking at the last question, I guess I'll open this up to the floor, and it's on networking, which we've previously touched on. But I guess, what advice would you give in terms of networking effectively during a pandemic? Anyone able to chip in, or anyone have some thoughts?
So I think when I was applying to companies, I would be very embarrassed or anxious about reaching out to people, whether that be in person or whether that be online. Now being in a position, I'm sure our speakers can, hopefully agree on this point in yourself, Ibra, that actually having gone through the process yourself, you're more than comfortable and capable of responding to people online. If somebody sends me a message on LinkedIn, not only will I answer that, I'm actually encouraged or incentivized to answer that, because I was in that position a few years ago when applying. So actually, as long as you're polite in the way that you approach people, not over the top. I'm sorry to message, and I know you're busy. I know this. It just, hi, I've come across your profile. I want to be in your position in a few years' time. Can you help me with X, Y, and Z? Unless I'm in busy season or I'm on a really grueling project, I'm going to take out at least 10 to 15 minutes to answer your message. Personally, I'm not on social media, so my main way of contacting me would be email or LinkedIn. But I mean, again, if I did have social media, that would be an angle as well. So I think, we are in a pandemic. It is a lot more difficult to network. There's not, in-person events where you'd be able to network, but it's definitely LinkedIn would be a starting point for any networking. But even, other social media outlets as well, and even again through email addresses is perfectly feasible as well.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ahmed. That was a really comprehensive answer. Just before I close the webinar, I just want to make our attendees aware of, okay, now the webinar is over, what do we offer? So initially I talked about how we do CV reviews, we do one-to-one coaching, mentorship as well. On the screen now, you should be able to see various forms or platforms to get in touch with us. Obviously, social media, LinkedIn, we have our own website, email address, and a dedicated WhatsApp number. So on conclusion of this call, if you guys have any CVs that you want us to look at, if you're currently in an application process with Deloitte or XYZ firm, do get in touch with us just to see how we can support you or put you in touch with the relevant people. And just to reiterate, the poll or the exit poll is still ongoing. We've got 50% response rate. So the remaining people, if I could just request if you guys can complete that poll. But just to wrap up there, firstly, thanks, and I really appreciate the time from Nisha and Sada as our speakers. I really enjoyed your presentations, some real gems out there in terms of advice. And likewise, thank you to Ahmed for joining the Q&A section. So that's everything from us from GradGurus. In terms of the next couple of weeks, obviously the exam season is almost upon us within May. So we're just going to take a bit of an interim, and then hopefully in July, June time, we'll restart with a brand new set of events. So some of the things we're looking to start is demystifying psychometric tests. So I'm sure that's a pain in the backside for so many people, and something completely new, especially for the first and second years. So we'll have dedicated events for that. And something new that we're trying to start off is, so currently we're doing our breaking into series, but we want to start off a new series talking about a day in the life of. So a day in the life of tech consultant, a day in the life of an auditor, a day in the life of investment banker, so on and so forth. So definitely keep up to date, keep posted with our social media page as we turn the next academic year, and we'll have a lot more events going on, and definitely a lot more resources to support you guys. I'm going to keep the call running on for a couple of more minutes as the last couple of people complete the poll. But again, thank you for everyone for you guys joining. And again, thank you to all our speakers for taking their time out today. Thanks, everyone.